again, welcome everyone. I'm glad that you're here. And this presentation was really just born out of pure frustration and fatigue with all the video conferencing that we have going on. And it's something that we're going to be stuck with for a little while. And so, yeah, or maybe forever. And so we need to make the most of it. And so this is born out of my learnings and my experiments in work and what has worked for us in our team at Wattpad. And how can we take Zoom and video conferencing? When I say Zoom, I mean video conferencing, remote work, and make that more meaningful and inspiring and just less fatiguing. And so for those that haven't joined the AHA slides yet, please take your phone, open up your browser and go to ahaslides.com/curezoom, or you can scan this QR code, and that will allow you to follow along with the interactive portions of today's presentation. And so we started off with just understanding a little bit about all the great food options. Thank you for participating in that, and hopefully you've all eaten and you're not too hangry as you go through this session. A heads up is that we will be going into one-on-one breakouts. We're going to actually make them groups of 3. And so that will be kind of midway through the session. So just giving you a heads up that you will be asked to participate in your breakout rooms to apply some of the learnings and processes that we've used at Wattpad in facilitating meaningful connections. So my question to you is, what are you hoping to learn today? So on your phones, you can just type in, what are your expectations for today's session? And then that will help to steer me and guide me as to, what topics are you most interested in, and allow me to spend a little bit more time on the things that are most meaningful to this group. So you can just type that in. What is it that you were hoping to get out of today's session? What were you hoping to learn? Why are you here? What motivated you to attend this session? Cure Zoom, make remote more fun. Absolutely. How to take Zoom from snooze to fab, all the jazz hands. Absolutely. Innovative ways to facilitate meetings. Yep, for sure. I'll be touching on the hygiene of Zoom meetings, how to engage people with presenting online, cool Zoom features, meeting new people, lots of Zoom work, so needing tips and tricks, and how not to bore my remote students to death, how to make Zoom more engaging when we're all zoomed out, how to manage Zoom tools better, more fluidly, and how not to suck at Zoom. And I can tell you, I mean, I had my share of stress in creating this session. I mean, I've done a lot of these interactive sessions, but because if your session is about not making Zoom suck, you better not suck as you're delivering it, right? So hopefully we get there today, or at least you learn some tips and techniques to make Zoom much more engaging. So hoping to get a glimpse of something better than just okay in terms of facilitation and experience management. And a key thing with Zoom and video is, how do we make it engaging? And we do need to use tools like AHA slides, I feel, as a more effective way of drawing people in. And even the simple feedback loop of you seeing your text, your questions replayed on screen engages you. And it gives you feedback, it gives you reward. It's like we're in a virtual whiteboard and this real-time feedback, and I love the polling features of AHA slides to help people stay engaged. So as Alona mentioned, if you've got questions, please pop them into the chat. She will be monitoring, and she'll pause me whenever there's an outstanding question that needs to be addressed, or if there's a clarification that's needed. So what are the things that we got to, well, we got to stretch. We need to be engaged. It's 7 o'clock or 7:17. Maybe you've eaten, maybe you've got a food coma, you've eaten some of that great food that you mentioned. So we're just going to do a little bit of stretching. I do encourage you to stand up if you can. We need to activate ourselves over here. And so let's do that for a minute. So we're going to start off with some shoulder shrugs. So shrug your shoulders up, and then roll them back. Shrug your shoulders up, and then roll them back. Shrug your shoulders up, and then roll them back. Now we're going to do it 3 times forward. Shrug your shoulders up and then roll forward. Up and forward. Up and forward. Now we're going to do some neck rolls. We're going to roll on to the front. So we're going to start off at the side and then roll side to side, but not to the back, just side to side. Side, side. And one more time, side to side. Then we're going to do one last thing is to do a little bit of running with our arms on the spot. So I want you to just pump your arms. We're going to do that a little bit slowly, We're going to do that. Just pump your arms, right? Yes, I love Trevor, the $6 million man, for those that understand that reference. Hopefully I'm not dating myself too much. Now you're going to pump your arms a little faster. Hold that for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then really fast, really fast, really fast. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so, you know, we're all zoomed out, we're all fatigued, so sometimes we need a little bit of a fresh air. One of my team members did this during our design critique, where she kicked us off with this kind of activity. And I cannot tell you, this is the sorriest state of my life. That was the most exciting thing that had happened to me all week, right? Was having that little stretch break, that little bit of just getting re-energized and being, you know, kind of changing our mindset in going into a session. So I encourage you to do that little stretch as a way of kind of breaking the tension and the release into a meeting. So I want to share a little story, a flashback Friday. It's Friday, March the 13th, 2020. So over a year ago, I remember that day. It was the Friday before March break. And my wife and I had packed up our van. We were getting ready to go to a place called Sunday River, which is in Maine, which is in the States. Ski resort, first time going to this resort. And we were going to spend our March break there with another family. And it was a very tumultuous time. I remember being in the office at Wattpad and hearing all the news reports about the coronavirus, about COVID-19, and how this thing was spreading. And we were checking in with the Sunday River Resort. Were they open still? Were they still accepting people? Were they going to be operational? And then we started hearing messages from this guy and more press releases, his wife contracting COVID. And I remember we were all looking for the signals that we could still go, that we could still travel. We wanted to travel. We were looking forward to this trip. Our van was all packed up with our ski equipment, all ready to go. And we hear our Prime Minister say, okay, curb all international, all non-essential travel. And then we go into this whole rationalization. Does the US count as international travel? Are we still allowed to go? And we were, you know, I was on a conference call with my friends and we're figuring out, should we go? Should we stay? And then we were hearing reports that the border was closing down and that there was a backlog and that they weren't letting people through. And the thing that really stopped us from going, and thankfully we didn't go, was when the Prime Minister said, he didn't say just like avoid all non-essential travel. He basically said, if you're out of the country, get your ass back into the country now, right? Come back to Canada because we might not be able to repatriate you. And that was when it really hit home. It was like, oh my goodness, this is serious. And so now we've had a year of this. And I saw someone coin the phrase, this is our paniversary. So our pandemic anniversary. Yes, I know it's a sad word. And we, you know, there's been maybe a few good things about it. Like we can kind of wake up and go. There was a survey done that a lot of people's, they wake up 20 minutes before their first meeting. So it's nice not having that commute anymore. I don't struggle in finding a meeting room. It's no problem. I can book a meeting anytime. I don't have to like search out for meeting rooms, and it's all the loungewear. right, that we have to be comfortable. Elastic waist never felt so good. But on the downside of things is my desk is beside my bed, or my desk is, in the same place that I like to relax at. Or constantly having to say to people, you're on mute, or you're disconnected. You ever do that thing where people are getting disconnected or they're very still, their video has frozen, and then everybody else in the meeting kind of shakes their head just to see if the connection is still live, right? That sort of thing. Or that terrible question, plans for the weekend, or what did you do this weekend? And like, we can't remember anything, right? And I have no plans. I have nothing to look forward to. And I think that, one sad thing is, like, in Zoom, no one can hear you laugh, right? So even as right now, I'm getting feedback through Alona and her expression, and that's keeping me going, right? But I have no idea if my jokes are terrible or if they're any good, right? I'll just have to assume that they're decent enough to keep going, and that's what I will choose to believe.
Would you like me to unmute and give you real feedback? I can do that.
Yeah, okay. Appreciate it. And so that's the thing, right? We've got a lot of these cues that we used to have before that made just meeting with each other a lot more rewarding. And we're literally desensitized, or we're actually handicapped and hampered in we're sensory deprived in our interactions with Zoom. And so we need to design our way out of it and be very intentional about how we use video conferencing. So, but a question I have for you is, can you tell me what you dislike or find frustrating with Zoom meetings, or remote video work altogether? What are some of the frustrations and challenges that you see? What gets you upset, or what tires you out about video conferencing? What don't you like about it? And we'll see if there's some patterns in terms of the issues that people are raising. One of the things that my team did a couple of weeks ago was people just had a time where they were sharing about their own pandemic or COVID fatigue. And, having that be voiced out where people had permission to share what their issues or what their frustrations were, really helped to bring people out and saying, you know what, I'm not the only one that's having these challenges or frustrations. And that's one of the challenges with the isolation, is that we don't have the same kind of natural flowing rhythms for things to come out. And we have to be intentional about it. So some of the challenges that you're raising here is, how do you build real rapport with people before and after the formal part of the meeting? That's a really interesting one. And I find that we have to be intentional about what we enable before and after the meeting. Simple things, but important things, like the way Alona greeted people today was fantastic, right? Greeting people by name, welcoming them. I want to shout out to JS, who I haven't chatted for a while. I saw her on the participant list, so I want to say hi to her. And just recognizing people and that's what we would do in real life, right? So how do we kind of carry that forward in how we do Zoom? There's not sensing the mood of the room, and so we need to facilitate signals for that, or encourage people to use reactions. Listeners timing out or not wanting to be on video, yeah, I'll chat about that. I mean, it is very real that people do check out on a Zoom call unless you enable that participation and set that expectation, or provide something for them to engage with. So comments here, not wanting to be on video. People are usually multitasking, slow network speed. Yes, that can be an issue. And yeah, being presentable, being worried about, what does my background look like? Are my kids going to come in? You'll probably hear my wife scream at my kids at one point during this session. So I'm just going to put out that disclaimer. Not knowing how good at doing the basics of meeting. People will be until they arrive 20 minutes late with IE or VPN and seemingly no experience. Listeners timing out, lack of physical feedback, when accessibility tools are not utilized or available, people seeming disengaged, discrepancy in comfort level of home setup, need and temptation to multitask. Yeah, distraction is a huge common theme. And even even when like, I gave this presentation, do I even know that people heard anything that I said? Did they get anything out of it? Or maybe I asked even for a decision to be made. Did I really get alignment on and support of that decision? And how do I check for that? And so we need to design our interactions differently. And yeah, staring at my own face as I talk, that's a thing. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. So thank you for sharing. These are all very kind of common issues that people that other people have surfaced in terms of their issues with the video and remote working. So when it comes to curing the common Zoom, the first thing we've got to do is we've got to manage our own Zoom fatigue, and we have to be conscious of what we can do to self-care. So trigger warning, I'm going to be showing an image of spider eyes in a second. So if you don't want to see that, then close your eyes for a minute. So let's see how creepy this is for all of you. Right, this is a close-up of what spiders look like. They have 8 eyes, and it's pretty intense to stare at that. And you know what these kind of 8 spider eyes reminds me of? A Zoom call, right? And so, Stanford published a research paper on what causes Zoom fatigue. And one of the causes for Zoom fatigue is that intense eye contact is fatiguing. We're not used to being stared at like this. So it's like having the 8 spider eyes stare at you. So excessive eye contact is intense. So a solution to that is make the video size smaller, just so that it seems like less people are staring at you in that kind of intense fashion. Another issue is that self-view within Zoom, right? So I don't know about you, but when I have self-view, and depending on, I like to rotate which desk I'm sitting at, or my view in my kind of family room that I'm in. And when I have self-view on and I'm sitting in front of this particular painting, I'm so obsessed with making sure that my head is right in the dead center, right? That I'm framed in the middle. It's the dumbest thing, right? But I'm staring at myself. Oh, I got to be in the middle. If I deviate to the left or right, it's like I snap myself back in, right? For that perfect framing. And that is actually pretty tiring. Staring at yourself is quite tiring. So if you want to reduce your fatigue, hide your self-view. It's an option within Zoom. You can click in the top right-hand corner of the gallery view and hide your own self-view. And that way you'll be just less distracted by it. And I find that actually quite freeing in terms of not being as constantly staring at myself. And even as I'm presenting right now, I need to stare right at this green dot over here so that it looks like I'm more talking to you as opposed to looking at my notes. The other thing is that video chats reduce our mobility. So in a normal meeting room, you'd be like turning your head around, looking at different people in different ways. But in a Zoom meeting, you're just like dead on straight all the time. And if you're obsessed with being in the center of your screen, then you're not actually moving your head all that much. So ways that you can address that is like give yourself a little bit more distance from the screen, and then give yourself a bit more freedom to move around and to look around. And then maybe, yeah, you turn off your video so that you can kind of stretch out and give yourself that permission to move around. And I give you permission to move around as you need, so that you might have to slap yourself to keep engaged, hopefully not, but give yourself that space to be able to move so that you're not stuck in this static position. And facilitating communications in Zoom requires a lot more effort. Right, so my signals back from you are pretty limited, right? So I need the help of someone like Alona to help facilitate the chat conversation back to me, to give me the feedback. So we need to leverage chat, and we need to leverage shared digital spaces. So even with my tooling now, I'm avoiding using a share screen view and rather having this feed. And then that allows me, because Zoom sucks when it comes to share screen, because it like blocks everything out for you as a presenter. It actually kind of makes you blind in the way that you operate. So Having a shared space. So when I ask you questions in AHA Slides and you provide me input and feedback, I know that you're with me, right? I'm getting the signal of the interaction and that we're together through this journey. So having those shared digital spaces is really important and something that we need to design in our interactions. All right, so that's some Zoom hygiene. Another key thing, the most fundamental conversation and interaction that you can have with people while we are working remotely is through one-on-ones, through meaningful one-on-ones. A one-on-one over a video call is the closest thing to a normal conversation. Or actually, I should say, back in the old days, that was called a phone call. And so the thing about a one-on-one Zoom call in particular is that it allows us to banter. It allows us to go back and forth, and we can be much more free-flowing in our conversation. Whereas as soon as it's a group call, where you have more than one-on-one, it's like, okay, you talk, then you talk, then you talk. We have to manage that conversation more specifically. But if it's a one-on-one, we just talk back and forth more like we normally talk. And we're hopefully directly engaged in our conversation. We can hear each other laugh. We can have a much more flowing, normal types of conversation. And it is the primary means to build trust and relationship. You can't do it in a group setting. When you're in a group setting, you have a bystander effect. And you have people that are not as engaged, whereas in a one-on-one, it's a trusted space. And it's where you can find out about more things like, oh, what did you eat for dinner tonight? How are you feeling right now? Right? And it's that human element that we would normally have with people and finding out a little bit more about their lives. Whereas in a group session, you're going to be much more stuck to the agenda and the business at hand. You don't have the room for that, that kind of surrounding conversation that actually enriches the trust and understanding and connection with one another. And the other thing that we've got to do in our one-on-ones is that we have to ask great questions, meaningful questions. And so the quality of the questions is really important. I mean, anyone that is a UX researcher, right? The questions that you prompt your participants with, the quality of that question, is it unbiased, is it open-ended, is going to correspond with the quality of the answers that you get and the meaning behind those answers. So we've got to be intentional in asking meaningful questions. And at Wattpad, there's a few questions that I use that we've iterated on that we use when it comes to checking in for our one-on-ones. Now, this is in the context of a manager-employee relationship, but it can be in a peer-to-peer as well. And in our check-ins, there is kind of two, say, fundamental questions that we have, or three, if you will. There's an understanding of how are people's capacity, or how are they managing with their workload, and what is their wellness. And for this, there's a 4-point scale that we use. 1 is unwell, 2 is struggling, 3 is coping, and 4 is healthy. And so the idea here, and this is like modeled after a mental wellness scale as a way of checking in with people and how they're doing. And the key thing here is giving people permission to say that they're unwell, that they're struggling. And I can't emphasize this enough. Let's face it, we've all had our struggles. I've had my struggles during COVID-19, during the social isolation. And the key thing for me as a manager was giving my team members the space and the room to express themselves in terms of how they were doing. And in particular, the room for them to say that they were unwell or that they were struggling, or if they were just coping. And it was both at a capacity level where I literally, I wasn't aware of some of my team members had capacity issues. They had taken on too much. And because that work was literally out of sight for me, there was no way for me to see that. So I needed to prompt that. And then the other dimension being the wellness on checking in, because wellness could be things that are impacted by their home life, and their home life and the work life is the same life now. So checking in on wellness was really important. And so with that as a baseline, the other key question isn't how are you, the other key question is, what's on your mind? And I find that this is a very useful question because it tells me what's important to them. But it also is open-ended in terms of the what's on their mind could be, my kid has COVID and they're being isolated for 2 weeks. So that's on my mind. And that's important for me to know when I think about how I can provide support in terms of accommodation. Or what's on your mind. This is what's worrying me about this project, or this is what is kind of consuming me right now. So open-ended, but it helps you to prompt your team member or employee as to what is most important to them. All right, so this is where we're going to do a little breakout. So Alona is going to open up some breakout rooms, and you're going to be put into rooms of 3 people. And what I want you to do is practice a check-in. And so between the 3 of you, you're going to go in alphabetical order by first name. Share, what is your capacity? What is your wellness on a scale of 1 to 4? And then also what's on your mind. And for the other people that are listening, your job is to just ask why and be curious about the reasons for why they scored things the way they did and what's behind what is on their mind. And so it'll be groups of 3 and we'll have 10 minutes for that, Alona, is that correct?
Yes, we have groups of 3. There are going to be 2 to 3 people in a group. If for some reason whoever's in your group is not responsive because they've stepped away, which could happen sometimes, just proceed with the other people, and after 10 minutes, we'll pull you back in. Okay, that's the plan. Is that good with you?
Yep, that sounds perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm opening the rooms now.
I can, oh.
Yeah, you can verbally say it too, Amanda. That's okay.
No, it's okay. I didn't realize it was on the slides.
No worries. Yeah, there is an aspect of commiserating. Also, just like the simple joy of meeting new people. It's a great privilege. The importance of good prompts. And then the importance of listening when your partners don't have video on. Actually, one of the things I should have emphasized is to have permission to have video on or off on that. You're not required to have your video on. You can turn your video on or off. What else, people? Feeling more connected. The first awkward 20 seconds when no one knows who's starting. So yeah, having the prompt, for instance, of going in alphabetical order so that you kind of avoid that decision paralysis. Meeting lovely people. Mountain Rob is my new fave. Oh, very cool. All right, and having the alphabetical order help. Yeah, so prompting and some of the hygiene in terms of the meeting is really important, and having really well thought out questions that will help to facilitate the conversation and get beyond the surface. Okay, yes, and it seems like people were getting into some personal stories, which is great. It's, even as a lot of people don't necessarily have one-on-ones, it's like, how long has someone gone without someone actually asking how someone is doing and listening to that, right? So some of the observations, we can still have a normal conversation in a short period of time. And on how, what's on your mind allowed you to learn about others in a non-superficial way. And that's really what we need to get to, is to have those prompts that open up people to share more about themselves. So thank you for participating in that. Another tool that set of questions that we use at Wattpad, this is a set of questions, and I'll share the slides with people afterwards, is about collaboration. And so it's about having a clear understanding of how we are to work together. We call this the empathy exercise, but you can think of it as a collaboration exercise. And it is facilitating an explicit conversation about what your working relationship is going to be like with another person. So starting off with, on the top left corner, the intersectionality, how do our roles overlap, what's working well for us, what hasn't worked well for us, strengths and weaknesses, what do I like to do? What do you like to do? What do I loathe doing? What weaknesses do I need support with? So for instance, I would share with one of my coworkers that I'm not necessarily the fastest talker, right? I need time to think. So, either you need to give me questions ahead of time, or you need to prompt me when I am not being as vocal as I need to be. And so being very explicit about that is very helpful in how we support one another. Communications on the bottom left. How do I like to receive communications? Do I prefer a Slack message, a document mailed to me, or an email or a text? What's the way, or do I prefer it verbally? Do I prefer a walkthrough in person? Do I need to change or improve the way I communicate? But also, how can I engage in healthy conversations? There's a colleague of mine that I work very closely with. We have a safe phrase that we use. So whenever there's an issue between us, she'll say, Andrew, it's time for real talk. Then I know, okay, I gotta listen and understand what's the issue over here. This is something that's important. So having that as a trigger word for us, a safe phrase for us, has been really helpful. Relationships, what's important in my work relationships, what impacts my working relationships, and what triggers me. And knowing what are the things that are more sensitive issues for you and trigger you is important to call out. Otherwise, someone might be doing those things and you might treat them with a particular intention, but they're just not aware of that being an issue for you. So again, here the pattern is about taking something and making it explicit and having an explicit understanding. And so having these questions as triggers, I found has been very helpful in creating stronger working relationships. Another technique that you can use is one-on-one virtual co-working. Some of my designers have done this, where what they do is they design side by side, they jump on a Zoom call, there's no preset agenda, and they're just hanging out. And if they need to, they're just working quietly on their own. And then it's as if you're sitting beside each other and say, oh, hey, can you take a look at this for a sec? This is an image of one of my coworkers, and I had and what she did was she actually recreated my background as her Zoom background, and it was her way of kind of trolling me. And so we were twinning for a day. It was quite funny. But virtual co-working can be a great way of more of that unstructured collaboration, open-ended collaboration. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some Zoom meeting hygiene, and I'll go quickly through these. First and foremost, as people arrive, welcome them by name. Alona did a great job of greeting people in as a great host. Really like that. Have an icebreaker during the arrival time. Gives people something to talk about, but also gives people something more, a human element for them to share about. And if you think about your real meetings, that's what you would do as you were waiting. You would chit chat. And so be prepared with good stimulation for revealing a little bit more about each other as humans. You might need to physically move to activate, to get people engaged. Set expectations for participation, warn people ahead of time if you're going to do breakouts, for instance, but also be inclusive of video on and off, and be inclusive of chat. So some details here. So setting expectations for participation. In video, there's oftentimes a bystander effect. In a bigger meeting, there's often a sense of bystander. People don't expect to be engaged or be put on stage. People might be bored, tired, or distracted. And they may have just low default expectations to be engaged. People might not be prepared. What do you mean I'm going to turn my video on? I'm not, I'm wearing my pajamas still, right? Or my COVID hair is out of control. And so you need to kind of set those expectations ahead of time. But also, you need to be inclusive of video on or off. Enabling an employee to have their video off helps them to minimize their fatigue, and enables them to be able to relax. And for some people, that's how they are able to participate as their best self. So I used to, I remember in my team meetings, by default, the majority of the designers would have their video on, and there was one person that was off. And I can tell you, As a manager, I was saying, come on, get with the program. That was my initial response. And then I realized, no, actually, this is helping that employee to be at their best self by having video off. And that person is more ready to, she was never at risk of not engaging. She was always engaging. And it was a way of recognizing that, that's just her preference, but also gave her more room and energy to participate without having to be preoccupied over the, her visual representation. So I'd rather have someone attend with video off versus not attending. All right. So let's talk a little bit about presenting information. One is to make your presentations interactive by design, which is what I am hopefully demonstrating to you today as a means of getting engagement. Have your attendees apply the information, work with the information in some way. And then at times it's actually better to record a video for reference. A live session isn't always necessarily the best thing. So with that, making it interactive by design is important. So we're conditioned to respond when we're prompted. That drives engagement. As soon as I ask a question, you're conditioned to respond and participate. If I don't do that, then it causes you to disengage. So asking questions with a shared space for response helps to facilitate that engagement. And I personally, I've really found AHA slides to be great because it's a combination of presentation and polling and participation. And then alternatively, you can use tools like Loom to record informational videos. If it's really something that you're just broadcasting out, some of my team members have preferred when videos have been recorded, especially about like knowledge or informational pieces, because they can rewatch the video and make notes at their own pace. So a live session isn't always necessarily the best solution. So I'm going to have a little quiz for you now. So if you're on your phones on ahaslides.com/curezoom, you're going to be prompted to enter in your name or your initials. And we're going to have a mini quiz. And we'll see who has retained the most information so far. So Amanda's on the board there. We see Paul, IP, Adam, ADM, or Rob, Hollywood. Yep, you can choose whatever name you want. There's JS. We've got Rick, CT, excellent. All right, there's Trevor. Cool, so it's going to be a short little quiz. We'll see who's done the best job of retaining the information, or maybe it's a reflection of my poor or terrible teaching skills. We'll see. All right, so I'm gonna start the quiz. Short little quiz, but this gives you a sense of what something like AHA slides can do. So here's the code, and you get, it's a multiple choice, and you get more points for answering the correctly and the right answer faster. So what makes Zoom feel more intense? Not knowing when to speak, having a bunch of eyes staring at you, or not having a private room to Zoom from? What is it about Zoom that can make things feel much more intense? 5 seconds. Everyone's answered. Excellent. Right, everyone got the answer correct, and then we can see the leaderboard, which is based on speed. So Amanda was the fastest to respond, and that's why she's at top. And Rob is right behind her, followed by Jonathan. And then I kind of troll people and just, see how people kind of do down and see who's like a little bit slower on the reaction scale. All right, question number 2. What type of meeting is most meaningful to building trust and relationships? Is it large group meetings, department team meetings, or one-on-ones? 10 seconds. 5 seconds left. 3, 2, 1. Time's up. And it's the one-on-ones. All right, excellent response rate. Amanda still fastest on the trigger over there. Well done. Followed by Rob and Jonathan. ADM, and Hollywood. JS is creeping up there as well. All right, last question. What is the best practice for video? Is it A, insist that video be on, B, have everyone have video off, or C, give permission for video on or off?
This is intense, man.
I know. There's a lot on the line.
I want to know what kind of phone Amanda has.
Just
All right.
practice.
Yes, that's right. She's just good. So giving permission. And see, Amanda stays on the top and followed by Rob, Hollywood, and ADM. Congratulations, Amanda. Well played.
Thank you. What is my prize?
Bragging rights.
I'll take it.
All right.
Amanda's got the direct fiber line to the AHA Slide headquarters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we use something similar at my work called Menti. It's actually, the interface is almost identical. So I'm kind of used to it. So maybe that's why.
All right, excellent. Okay, so engagement through things like quizzes and keeping it interactive and having a leaderboard. I've used this same tool for a social. Actually, what I did was I did a departmental trivia, and where the answer was an employee, but it would be, I asked everybody a survey of like 20 questions about themselves, and then I used people's unusual answers as a way of as the answers for the trivia quiz. And one of the most important things in this remote age is, how do we build connection between people? How do we surface the commonalities that people have? So it's through that commonality, that's when people are going to be able to build relationships, and we need to be intentional about facilitating that. So, all right, I'm going to get wrapping up here. Facilitating input and ideas. So when we are having more of an ideation or a brainstorming or an input type session, what do we need to facilitate that? One, it's have a live shared workspace like a Miro or Mural or AHA Slides. Enable practice activities. So when we started with AHA Slides, my practice activity was for you all to tell me about a meal that you enjoyed recently, just to get your feet wet. So in the same thing, if I'm using a tool like Miro.com, you need to have a simple activity to get people used to the interface so that they get warmed up on how to use it. So you might have, okay, post a sticky note about what you did this morning, right? And then they get used to the mechanics of it. Be inclusive of verbal and text inputs, allow participation in multiple ways in case a lot of people don't feel as comfortable to speak up in a Zoom meeting, but they are much more able to participate via text or more comfortable in doing that. So you want to be inclusive of that. When you're facilitating input ideas, have a defined order for sharing so that we avoid that, okay, who's going first, who's going next, right? And so I will either dictate that as an alphabetical order, or if it's a small enough group, I'll type out the order in the chat and say, okay, it's Alona, then it's Amanda, then April, and then people see that order, and then they know when to chime in and out. They don't have to wait for it. Do I go next? Do you go next? Do I go next? Or even have that in your workspace. And then we need to ask open-ended questions to check for alignment or misalignment. And so we have to be careful about what type of questions we prompt to check for whether or not we have convergence or divergence. So having a live shared workspace, I like Miro.com, but you can also hack Google Slides to do it as well. You can make a Google slide like a large canvas and use master slides as a way for setting up background elements, and then just hacking Google Slides as a way of doing it. Some people like to use Jamboard, usually, which is also a Google tool, but basically people that I have them use Jamboard are basically people I don't like because it's a terrible tool. It's very limiting and very simple in it, but if you like that, more power to you. But a live shared workspace really creates that sense of activity and engagement is really important. Having a defined order for sharing, either make that alphabetical or list up the names explicitly so that people don't have to worry about that during the session in of itself. And then ask for open-ended questions. So instead of saying, do we all agree on this approach? You're getting more input. Well, what approach should we take? Is everybody okay with this? And change that more to please vote on the options that resonate. So you want to get that open-ended confirmation that they're aligned with you, the open-ended understanding, and their expression and their capturing of the to-dos or the action items, so that you're checking for sure that you have true alignment. And then the last thing I'll just chat about is, building human connection within Zoom and keeping it fun. There are some specific exercises that I've done that have worked really well. Icebreakers, always have an icebreaker ready. My team at Wattpad, they gave me a calendar of dad jokes. So there's like a dad joke every day. So I torment them with a dad joke every time I start a meeting. There's a game called Who's This? I don't know if that's the exact name, but the way that this game works is that everyone takes a photo of different things in their home. So a bookshelf, your fridge, your your desk setup, your closet. And then someone collects all those photos and then randomly picks one of the photos, and you have to guess, whose is this? Is this Amanda's fridge? Is this April's bookshelf? Is this the art that's on Jonathan's wall? And so that's a great way of surfacing connections between people and commonality between people. Adjacent to that is the people trivia. Survey, I would survey people using like just a Google form, 20 questions about them. You can actually just search for 20 questions and you'll see lists of questions to ask about for people. And then I would collect the responses. And actually one of my favorite questions, I ask people 2 truths and a lie. And then I'll bring that up and I'll present these 3 facts and say, okay, which one of these are true for Alona and which one of them is a lie about Alona. And it's a great way for people to get to know one another. And then the final thing, one of the things that we do as a design team at Wattpad is birthday or celebration cards. We create a Google slide, and based on what we know, we create, we design our own birthday cards for each other, where everyone takes a slide. And it's a real nice way to celebrate. One of our team members is a movie buff. And so we would take her image and we would insert her in all different movie posters. And that was that's the kind of thing that you can do as a design team. But having those, but there are tools out there that are specifically for like online collaborative birthday cards, but Google Slides is a perfect way of doing that as well. All right, my last question for you is, what is one thing that you'll now do differently when it comes to Zoom? What is your takeaway from today's session? Wear pants, I like that. Excellent. Use interaction tools, surface the connections between people. Spiders are scary. Asking open-ended questions. Yeah, icebreakers are a must. It's those peripheral moments that are the moments in which connections are built. So the difference now is that those happened intrinsically in our meetings. Now we have to make it, we have to be explicit about facilitating this, because if we don't, as someone was sharing, like, we just get to work and we don't have any of that human connection, and it makes work a lot less enjoyable. So we have to be much more deliberate about how we run a meeting. We have to be deliberate about those softer moments and those connections. Yeah, and get a faster phone if you want to win at interactive games. All right, excellent. That's all I have for you today. So happy to take any questions that people have, anything to elaborate further on. But otherwise, thank you. You've been a lovely audience. It's been fun.